Nottingham, 1811. Workers gather in the dark, their faces blackened with soot to hide identities. They move with the coordination of a disciplined infantry. These were the original Luddites. They were not technophobic fools, but master craftsmen who saw the factory floor for what it was. They realized the power loom wasn't just a faster tool. It was a structural end to the artisan's way of life. The machine converted the skilled master into an interchangeable cog worker. As Max Planck observed, scientific truths don't win by convincing the opposition. They win because the opposition eventually dies off, replaced by a generation that grew up with the new reality. The Luddites were right about the trajectory, but wrong about the schedule. 2 centuries later, the same mechanics of obsolescence have reached the level of human cognition. Over 10 millennia, the foundation of economic value has fractured and reformed 4 times. Every shift is an inversion. When they occur, civilizations that cling to the previous model become relics, while those that adapt to the new mechanics flourish. We are currently moving through the 4th inversion, a shift happening 100 times faster than those that came before. This timeline maps the 4 distinct pillars of value. To understand why this final shift is final, we must map the structural mechanics of the previous 3. Unlike the previous 3, this final inversion leaves no economic retreat for human utility. For 10,000 years, the economic engine followed a brutal logic. Whoever controlled the land controlled the world. Land meant food, and food meant survival. This created a biological class system. A person's value was calculated by the acreage they could plow, and the aristocracy maintained power through title deeds to the soil. Venice broke this model. With almost no arable land, it became Europe's wealthiest city by focusing on the flow of goods rather than the static land that produced them. In 1750, James Watt introduced the independent condenser to the steam engine, accelerating this transition. A single mill in Manchester could produce more cloth than 100 villages. The agrarian math collapsed. Power shifted to the landless merchant who could organize production. Value had moved from what you owned to what you could organize. This was the first inversion, the migration of value from static assets to dynamic flows. The era of labor dominance lasted 2 centuries. Rights, unions, and the 40-hour week were built on the belief that human hands were the primary engine of value. That ended with the transistor in 1947. By 1970, computers began to direct the production lines that humans once manned. In 1930, Ford's River Rouge plant employed 100,000 people. By 1990, it produced more cars with only 6,000. In this second inversion, value transferred to productive capital, specifically the algorithms and programs creating value on a loop. Around 2000, capital itself became intangible. Kodak once employed 170,000 people to maintain market position. In 2012, Instagram reached $1 billion valuation with just 13. WhatsApp repeated the pattern, using 55 employees to dismantle the global SMS industry and hundreds of thousands of jobs. This is the 3rd inversion. Value is no longer a physical good, but the invisible structure of the network itself. This explains the S&P 500 paradox. Corporate revenues climb while employee counts shrink. Value has decoupled from human mass. On November 30, 2022, the launch of ChatGPT marked the start of the final inversion. Historically, intelligence was a form of labor. It was scarce because it was locked inside human heads. Intelligence has now become capital. It can be replicated infinitely and set to improve itself. Compare the costs. A human writer earns $35 an hour. An AI model generates that text for a fraction of a cent. Because software capital is recursive, it uses its own output to refine its code, constantly lowering its marginal cost. Economics is the study of scarcity. When the cost of high-quality cognitive output trends toward 0, the scarcity-based system ceases to function. This cognitive pricing system actively bankrupts the traditional model of knowledge work. The ultimate divide between human and machine labor is the metabolic rift. Human labor is fundamentally metabolic. We require food, shelter, sleep, and an entire social infrastructure to remain functional. AI, however, is entirely non-metabolic. It consumes only electricity and requires absolutely no biological upkeep or emotional management. The ledger for a human radiologist includes 13 years of training, a massive salary, and biological fatigue. An AI diagnostic tool costs pennies per scan, never tires, and gains accuracy. Factoring biological overhead, human economic value on cognitive tasks turns negative. This is a new category of economic life, entirely decoupled from the survival requirements of a biological engine. Previous inversions always left a path for retreat. When we were pushed off the land, we moved to the factory. When the factories were automated, we moved into knowledge work. Creativity and caregiving were the final safe havens. Yet AI-generated music is already topping charts, and patients are reporting higher satisfaction with AI therapists. Even the role of AI trainer is temporary. Machines are already being used to supervise and train the next generation of models. We are the final generation to view human thought as a scarce economic commodity, and the first to see that era end. There will be no fifth inversion. Once intelligence is abundant and non-metabolic, there is nothing left to invert. Trying to adapt to a system that mathematically mandates our economic obsolescence is the same mistake the Luddites made. The end of our economic utility is a liberation from the idea that we are our work. We can finally stop asking how we work and begin asking why we exist.